Welcome to the Value Add panel. Today we get to hear from some of the most active and respected professionals in our region who will share their vision and ideas about how to best target multifamily investment, specializing in value add. We have Gibby Cohen, founder and CEO of CGI Strategies, Paul Dainstrad, CEO of Starpoint Properties, Bobby Korshidi, President and Principal of Archway Fund, David Nagel, CEO of Decron Properties, Jim Wiegand, the Executive Vice President, Head of Real Estate Banking for Bank of California, and Jonathan Winter, President and CEO of Windstar Properties. And I'll start with you, David. In a competitive market for value-add projects, how would you define the landscape and how are you finding deals?
Well, as we all know, hard to find deals that make sense. It's easy to find deals. The hard part is to find deals that make sense. And it's getting, from our perspective, tougher and tougher. It feels like each year yields are getting thinner and thinner. Going in, cap rates are getting thinner. And I think from our perspective, what we're looking for is, one of the ways we're trying to make more sense out of it is actually to spend less on our renovations and try and get more bang for our buck. But to be honest, it's difficult. It's difficult to find the deals. And as a result, our pace of acquisitions has slowed in 2019, notwithstanding that we bought over 1,000 units in 2018.
Great. Paul.
I echo the same sentiment. Value add has always been an arbitrage play, and today to find that arbitrage is more and more difficult, especially in California with a lot of legislation that's either being proposed or recently passed. So if we find value add, we're finding it in smaller pockets, secondary markets, especially in those markets where the job formation and the fundamentals are still strong, but maybe the capital flows, it's a capital flow play as a whole, and there's so much capital that's come into value add that it's compressed or the arbitrage is gone. So we're regional throughout the U.S., small secondary markets is where we're finding opportunity today, but still very challenging.
Giddy.
For the most part, we're going for a little bit older product. We want to go to the 1970 with some serious heavy construction, since we have experience in development ground up, so we bring this into the occasion. And rather than going with the regular 5,000 or 10,000 per unit, we are trying to go with something a little more substantial. Having said that, we get lucky from time to time to find a deal, but it's super difficult, so it's not like we have any magic.
Jonathan? Got a little technical difficulty with Shad.
Okay, this one. For us, the fundamentals have really stayed the same despite the change in the markets. Today, we're just a lot more cautious. You can't just buy and just assume the values are going to bail you out by going up 15% and rents are going to bail you out going up by 15% a year. That's not there anymore. But how we always have bought was always just trying to figure out where that next location is going to be and then getting into that location before it kind of takes off. So that's still our MO today as it was throughout the course of the last 6-7 years. So you look at we got into Glendale in 2015. You look at Glendale today, and you would think a city like Glendale's been what it's been for 20 years. It's basically almost like a West Hollywood today. Getting into Alhambra in 2017, getting into Anaheim in 2018, getting into Downey this year, 2019. So for us, a huge part of it is, since the core of our properties are in the center of the city of LA, is when people do move out because of affordability issues, is not asking why are they leaving, but where are they going, and seeing where that security deposit refund check is going and following it So this way you're starting to get a feel of where that next area is gonna be, and that's always what we've kind of done, and that's what we're continuing to try to do. Like everyone said, it is harder, but it's not continuing to, it's staying within the scope of what we do with organic growth to areas that can produce a true value add, as opposed to just sticking in the core Koreatown Hollywood, which is obviously very, very pricey.
You know, and I'll just open it up to you guys to answer. What are some of the secondary markets you guys see that are the new? Where's the new Echo Park? Where are the new areas that you see that are these great markets that are coming up?
I'll tell you where we found a lot of successes in Ventura County. The east portion of Ventura County has done very well from us. If you go from Simi Valley, let's say to Camarillo, that inside pocket where housing supply is really limited, we have found that our ability to gain value and provide quality housing has really been very beneficial, because there's barely any brand new product in that entire submarket, and as a result of that, having just older product that's now been completely renovated is giving something unique to the marketplace, and we've found a lot of success there.
David, maybe talk a little bit about, I know you did a project in Simi Valley and Moore Park, and so those are not typical markets that you guys would go in. How did those deals work, and why did you like those deals?
So those deals worked out very well. We're also in Thousand Oaks, and we're also in Woodring. So we have about 8 communities just in that pocket, probably about 1,500 units in that portion, and all of them. Each one of them, and some are now completed, and some are now in the middle of the business plan. And in each case, we have found that that upside is there because there's a lot of affluence there. There's a lot of great jobs in that portion of Ventura County, or traveling to the west portion of the San Fernando Valley. And that's really the key to success in value add, is to look for jobs. And you're looking, we call it JSS, which stands for Jobs, Schools, and Supply. For our perspective, if you can check the box on all 3, then over time you're going to do well. And that's what Ventura County did for us. It had the jobs, it had limited supply, both in the short term and the long term, and it has great schools.
Great. Paul or Giddy or Jonathan, anyone want to talk about any of the secondary markets that you guys are looking at?
We really like Northeast LA. We love the San Gabriel Valley. It seems that a lot of people that are now getting priced out are moving there. Starting, if you want to consider from Glendale to Pasadena and to Alhambra, Arcadia, super strong. West Covina, we have property in Azusa, and the rents are strong, the demographics are strong. It's finding those, like what David said, for us, a lot of the stuff that we have is more entry-level to mid-level housing, so we're more looking for the nightlife, the live-work-play type of area, as opposed to more of the school systems. And in a lot of those areas, you wouldn't believe if you go there how it's just like a quaint town, and there's just a lot going on, and we've really, really found a lot of value in Northeast LA.
Our opinion right now, trying to do value add in California, there's just too many headwinds and too much legislative risk. And so even though probably 70% of the value add we have done historically has been in Southern Cal or California, we're almost redlining California right now for value add, again, because of legislative risk. If I were to pick markets in Southern California that we believe are going to sort of outperform, we love Long Beach and a few of the surrounding areas right there. We love parts of northern Orange County, and also segments and pockets in San Diego. Outside of California, again, secondary markets that we're looking at, Austin, great job formation, and the school base there continues to sort of provide great support.
So when you talk about North Orange County, are you talking about, like the city of Orange, Santa Ana? What cities are you talking about in Northern Orange County?
Yeah, Santa Ana. It's still very, very affordable you can still get in, you know, relative to California at a per unit basis that makes a lot of sense. And there is high income earners there because of just the job base. So, you know, to try to get a $400 or $500 a unit lift on a rehab there, it's relatively easy to do.
We've actually seen the same thing. In 2017, we entered Anaheim. And we kind of looked at Anaheim and studied it for a year before we did our first deal there. And we kind of looked at the Platinum Triangle in Anaheim. It was very reminiscent of downtown LA in the late 90s. You have not one but two professional sport teams there. Like after Staples Center was built, you have all these industrial buildings that completely got knocked down. You have $3,000-$4,000 rents now on high-end Class A apartments. They're building out a ton of retail. There's a ton of nightlife. So we started to try to pick off these 50s and 60s and 70s buildings and 80s right around the Platinum Triangle. And we're seeing the exact same lift, the exact people that are priced out already at the Triangle. You have the main metro rail of Orange County that runs through there. You have the largest convention center on the West Coast that's in Anaheim. So again, very reminiscent of downtown LA. And like all these other areas, kind of how LA shifted for a lot of the millennials from everyone wanting to live on the beach on the west side to a more urban lifestyle in downtown. I think OC will always be a beach town, but you're seeing that shift into a more urban type of living away from just, you know, Newport and back into places like Anaheim and Santa Ana. So we've noticed the same thing Paul said.
Just
Paul,
Just one thing I wanted to add in to echo Paul's sentiments. From the standpoint of a value-add bridge lender, we are seeing, I would say that if we had to take a percentage of our loan requests, we are seeing less and less here in Southern California and more in secondary markets. I think Paul mentioned Austin. We're seeing a lot of money going to Denver. You know, as he mentioned earlier, it's an arbitrage play. And so we're seeing, just as a general trend, we're seeing more value-add buyers, and we're seeing more loan requests outside of Southern California.
As another lender perspective, you know, we are Bank of California, so our tertiary markets are Arizona, Nevada, Oregon. We like all the markets within California. We're not so much concerned as much by market as we are by operator and the investor and the developer. Several of the people on the platform with me today are clients of Bank of California. Through our friends at Marcus and Millichap, I promised to Sharon, Danny, Michael, Robert, Preston, make sure you talk with them first, but then they will guide you to some of the programs that we can offer, because in addition to your strike price and the opportunity you have within that property is what is the cost of holding that property? And then what are your future costs? If you're doing bridge, it may be a variable rate that you're looking at. What's your exit strategy? You know, some of the programs that we've been able to provide offer you a fixed period now, offer you an earnout in 12 months. You're locking it all up now, so there are no variable considerations from your capital stack down the road. And so that can provide value when you go into some of these markets where you don't need to hit the home run. A single and a double are still great. The home run, obviously, much better.
I was just going to add, so Paul, I also like the Santa Ana market. We bought a project there about 2 years ago, but we don't call it Santa Ana, we call it South Coast, because we want to grab hold of Costa Mesa. And the story there really is, it's really a job story. I think that's why you like that part of Orange County, and Yoni the same. When you think of the value-add business, the underlying theme is one thing, and that's really jobs. Now we have legislative issues that we got to deal with, and those issues are because we got to get a hold of the real estate, right? So can we get a hold of that real estate or not? And that's a whole different subject I'm sure Mike's going to cover. But ignoring that part, the fundamental deal level, most important thing is where are the jobs and where's the relation of that apartment building to the jobs, and how do you get access to those jobs? So in the case of Santa Ana, how many hundreds of thousands of jobs are there within, you know, a 10-mile radius of there? Probably maybe 500,000 jobs. And that's really why that fundamentally is such a good market.
I think in addition to that, one of the areas was the Inland Empire. At one point, it was just a bedroom community to the greater LA area. And now with all the industrial, the Amazon effect that's out there, they're able to stabilize themselves and have their own job center. And so you're seeing more growth out there that you wouldn't have thought of, and it's a little bit more stable than you would have thought as well.
I think the common theme here is traffic, and with more focus on millennials, and people just don't want to sit in their cars, and when you have positive job growth in a market, it makes driving it makes less sense to drive, and so. It's, I think, one of the common themes you're going to see between the different markets here in Southern California.
Yeah, so, when you mentioned North Orange County, it's kind of like the only place that my construction workers can still work and live. So now you guys are gonna kind of like gentrify that area, so my guys are gonna have to move even further out. So, how about you, Giddy? I don't know if you answered on what submarkets that you're looking at.
For the most part, CGI was focusing on ground-up development in California. So we set up a shop about 10 years ago in Orlando, and that's our secondary market, which is Orlando and Atlanta, and we're able to get pretty decent structure there. But now we definitely try to see if we can get out of the heart of LA into anywhere from the 10th freeway all the way south to Orange County, and just echoing David and Neil's here, the same market pretty much. Having said that, just like everybody here knows, it's super difficult and it's hard to find the right yield, and we're definitely reducing our expectation of how many deals we're going to do this year.
Very good. So with with the construction market as it is today, and I'll start with you, David, because I've worked with you most of anyone on the panel, is how are you with tariffs and potential overruns? Say you have $3 million budget and the project comes in at $4 million. How are you mitigating costs? In a kind of a fluid market for value add?
Well, first of all, I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, how does it go from 3 million to 4 million? All you have to do is work with Mike Rosner, and that'll never happen, right? So the answer is, I can't make predictions about tariffs, notwithstanding I think they'll solve that problem, but I will tell you that costs just keep increasing. And that, of course, puts more and more pressure on our needs to raise rents. And I think that's the biggest problem in the marketplace is that, cap rates have not really changed. You get fooled by the fact that treasuries are so low. So if the treasury's down to, 210, 212, whatever we are, then cap rates must be inside 4 or in the low 4s here in Southern California, depending on, how many people are chasing that particular deal. And then construction costs are only going in one direction, which is higher, which again means margins are just thinning. And I think really what's going to happen ultimately is, at some point everyone's going to say, just not worth it. But it's not there right now. I mean, we're swinging at deals. We're using, 2018 underwriting, and guess where we are? Not winning them. People are still, convincing themselves that they're going to be okay. And I think in the end, some deals I say good luck to them, and in others we'll just keep swinging and hope that the market will make sense to us and come to what I'll call our levels. That's what we're hoping for. And if you got to be really aggressive and you got to make deals, then you're going to go further and further out of town. I do think a lot of the markets that were mentioned here, I don't know enough about Austin, I don't know enough about Denver, but I hear they're good markets. But I do think it's driven us out of state, and the market that we went after recently was the Pacific Northwest. Now there's no great deals up in Pacific Northwest either. I think it's just as active as a market. Cap rates are very similar here to Southern California, but at least we don't have now there, at least today, the legislative concern. That we don't have right now. And so we can kind of knock that out. We still have a job story. They actually make in the Pacific Northwest, income-wise, almost the same that they make down here in Southern California, but the housing costs are much cheaper. A one bedroom there is, sub 1,500 renovated. It's $500 more a month here. So that's the market now that we're taking a look, and that's why we're forced there. But again, for me, it always comes down to the same thing. I'm not going anywhere where I don't see a great job story. If I don't see jobs either close to my building, or I'm near a traffic corridor or a subway or something that's going to get me to the jobs easily, then I don't want that building.
Now, one thing I wanted to add is when you look at the median income here in Los Angeles, you're talking about a median income that's between $50,000 and $60,000 a year. And when you look at construction costs, and when you look at what you need to perform on the rents, you need $3 to $4 rents depending on where you're building. I mean, I know there are people performing to $3 in East Hollywood, when that used to be the number in West LA. And so how many people are there actually who can afford to pay these rents? And when you're bringing a project out of the ground and you want a good job story, the question is with construction costs, who is your, it costs the same to build in Santa Ana as it does to build in West LA. And so the question is, who are you building for? And how many people are out there looking for luxury units? And so that sort of, there has to be, how many luxury units are we going to absorb in the city at $3 rents? And so it begs the question, and perhaps we'll talk about it later, but it begs, there needs to be, that's a really big problem, and I think there needs to be a solution there. So I agree with your sentiment about jobs, but what kind of jobs are those? Are we going to build buildings for blue collar jobs? It's probably not going to pencil. So just a consideration.
The one question I've had for the group here is, we're seeing a lot of co-living or micro-living units coming online to address exactly what you have. So your overall rent is $1,500, but you get 300 square feet for that.
In what areas are you seeing that? Where, in downtown or?
Well, definitely downtown, west side are a couple of ones. Northern California, you're seeing it all throughout San Francisco and the Bay Area, because $4,000 rents for somebody who's not making a significant amount of money is something they can't stomach. We haven't gotten terribly aggressive in that area, but I've in all of these conferences I go to, it seems to be the one thing that people are gravitating towards, and adult dormitory living, which is beyond me, but I understand it.
So, Jonathan, I'd like to hear how you're mitigating costs in a market where construction prices are going up. You bought something, say in 2017 or 2018, took you a little while to get up and going, and now you find out, okay, the budget was this much, but costs have gone up by 10%. How are you mitigating the cost?
So for us, we don't do any ground up construction. So for us, it's all extensive value add renovations. And on those renovations, we third party out to a vendor, and depending on the unit type, location, it can be anywhere from $8,000 to a $20,000 a unit renovation. We've probably seen that uptick because of what's going on, 10% in terms of what we're paying to our vendors now. In terms of just a regular, call it a $10,000 renovation, might now be closer to an $11,000 renovation just because of the cost of the supplies. We generally, when we budget for our renovations, we take an extra 15% in reserves to make up for it, so it hasn't really hurt us yet. If that number continues to drive up to 20% in the middle of a deal, that can then start to cause issues, but we really haven't seen that yet. In terms of what we were just talking about here, in terms of the co-living, we look at that. We have a lot of core downtown LA, Koreatown, Hollywood, small units, and we really look at that as who's ever developing that stuff today. I think it's a win-win for both sides because you're able to get the maximum rent per foot because you're putting people together. So it's like they're paying you're giving 500 square feet, but you're getting 2 or 3 people to live in there. each one paying $1,000. So for that 500 square feet, you're getting $3,000, and if you rent it out conventionally, you might get $2,000. So it's a win-win on all sides. It's basically glorified student housing, which we do. We have about 400 beds of student housing. So we haven't dipped into that. We haven't dipped yet into doing that, but I think it's a model that's basically just services today's time. So for instance, if there becomes a time again, which will happen, that rents become more affordable, you're not gonna just wanna have adult dorming living, you're gonna move back out. So when you're underwriting that, if you can get a 3, 4, 5 year run now where you can just, make $3,500 in a unit that you would otherwise make $2,200 on, go for it if people are willing to live together. But I really think that those buildings will the studios and one bedrooms will ultimately turn back to regular studio and one bedroom rents and get those. So as relates to the underwriting, I really think it's the exit of how you're looking about that, how long you think that's going to last. If you think it's going to last, I think those rents are real. If you don't think it's going to last as long, then I think you're going to struggle to hit those $6 a foot rents, which are going to show on those co-living units.
So, but in those, you're going to have some, some extra, spaces for them to congregate and amenities. And how much more are you spending on the amenities?
So the truth is, on the stuff that we have, which is, again, more entry mid-level, you don't need to do much. You really don't need to do much. If you just literally, in terms of amenities, for all of our stuff, we always say this in our company, all of the amenities that we have are not what's within our building, it's what's right outside of our building. So our tenants are birding everywhere, they're down the blocks from bars, from their jobs, from 10 million square feet of office. We have a pool, we have maybe a gym if we can fit one in, but that's the type of product that we have. So our amenities are what's right outside, and as it relates to that, it is an in-demand thing now, and to just throw 2 beds in there into a unit, you don't need to have, they'll figure out how to share a kitchen, you put 2 beds in there, and you match people up, and each one pays you $1,000, you get $2,000 instead of $1,500. It's not a bad model to use in today's climate.
Yeah, it's not a bad model. It's just I don't know how it's not really proven, So we don't know how long it's going to last where people get sick of living in those little tight spaces. I mean, I know it's worked in other markets, but it's yet to be proven here in California.
Just one thing the one thing that doesn't lead me to believe that co-living is just a fad is, so as a lender, we've looked at a lot of value add, industrial conversions to creative, and really those are really meant, companies are going in to attract millennials. And I just think that it's, from the standpoint of putting yourself in the millennial's shoe or thinking as they do, I mean, it never made sense to me why someone would pay $3 to $4 rents on a converted industrial building when you can rent Class A office for potentially a lot less.
Right.
And so I think there is altogether there is a shift towards accommodating millennials, and I think this is, I was a millennial a long time ago, and so I think so I think I seem to think that it's less, from the standpoint of a lender, we seem to think that it's less of a fad and more of a need. And believe me, we were, until we started seeing them come in, we were as skeptical as you were. But I think it's really driven by a generation, and I think it's here to stay.
Great.
And people enjoy actually the social experience of it. This is LA. You have a lot of people that are flying here from all over the world. They're coming here to try to make it in entertainment and music. They don't have friends, and it's almost like this creates for those people, it becomes a social scene. It's not, which is real.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. And so we know at some point there's going to be a rent control bill that's passed. We don't know when it's going to be, but at some point it's going to come back, and at some point it's probably going to pass. So discuss, maybe David, start with you, the impacts of various rent control ballots being considered at the state level.
Well, so right now, I think everyone's familiar, or you should be familiar with what they call, I think, AB 1482. That's the bill that they're calling a statewide rent control bill. It's In our office, we really call it's really an anti-gouging is really what it is. It's 7% plus CPI. Today that would be about 9.7%. There's already an anti-gouging rule already that, like in City of LA, I think we can't raise rents more than 10%. So it's already there. If we end up, and that is what we have to face, then I think we've done a good job, and California Apartment Association and all those that have been helping all of us landlords out through the legislative process have done a good job. But I think the real fear is that once that's in, then a 7% level could drop to 5, to 4, to 3. And that's why they're calling it not anti-gouging, but more of rent control. But ultimately, you know, being in a rent control market, we have a lot of buildings in rent control markets, and if you have patient capital, then you can make money in a rent control market. It just takes time. It takes a longer time. You got to set up your business plan for that longer horizon, but you can actually do well. The real risk is another bill, which is the Just Cause Ordinance. That's the bill that really scares us. That's the bill that will, in my opinion, shut down the value-add business if that goes through.
And tell us a little bit about maybe that bill. Do you know any specifics about that bill?
So right now, if you want to vacate a tenant out of an apartment, you have to provide them a 60-day notice, but you do not have to give them, at the end of their lease term, of course, and assuming you're not in a rent-controlled market. So you can just go ahead and give that tenant then a 60-day notice, and you do not need to give them the reason why you want them to move out, which ultimately, of course, is because you want to fully renovate that unit, and you want to raise the rent on that unit by 25% or more. With the Just Cause Ordinance, if that would go through, then you could not evict that, you could not take that tenant out without paying relocation fees.
Jonathan, how is this affecting your business plan?
So just a couple on what David was saying. The AB 1482 passing without just cause passing, AB 1482 then has no teeth, right? Because so you don't give them a rent increase, you give them a notice to quit. You still free up the unit, renovate it, and rent it for $700 more. So if AB 1482 is meaningless without the Just Cause bill also passing. So for us, they go hand in hand. There's no, we hope one passes, we hope the other one doesn't, because there's no way that AB 1482 is just going to pass and everyone's going to be happy, because then what are we all going to do when we buy a building with 30% market below? We'll just give them we won't give the tenant, it's even more punishing to the tenant. We won't even give them the opportunity to pay and stay, because we won't even give them a rent increase notice. We're just going to say you have to leave. And that's just going to obviously then bring in the other bill, which would be Just Cause, which is going to not allow you to just give a notice to quit with 60-day notice. So I really think, and this might not be popular to say, I really think that we're talking California now. We all live in California. We're operating apartment buildings in California. The logic has to be removed from this conversation. We thought we had a win in November. Okay, when Cause Hawkins failed, everyone celebrated, we cheered. All that we saw happen after that was Glendale imposed a form of rent control overnight without any votes. Just council members of the city. Inglewood did the same thing. Other cities are on the same track doing the same thing, and it's happening. Okay, it's happening. It's happening with AB 1482 and with Just Cause. It's going away, and I think we've almost taken on. We look at it like to the tenants. And it's not necessarily gouging. If we just bought a building where all the rents are $1,000, everyone else on the block is paying $1,500. If we raise the $1,500, it's a 50% increase. Are we gouging? No, we're getting market rent, but no one understands it like that. So I think the same way the tenants don't understand it like that, because they've been paying $1,000, and you're not going to get them to understand that now their market is $1,500. I think us as owners and landlords have just taken this also defensive approach of, we don't understand why this is happening. And ultimately, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when this is going to pass, because it is, and it's going to pass it's going to pass with both not allowing for Just Cause evictions and AB 1482 with maximum rent caps. And I think what we all need to do as owners is we gotta stop looking at this as negative, because that's what then is gonna turn, it's a herd mentality, the market downwards. We got to look at it like, what would you prefer? It's happening. I'm not going to get into the politics of California, how far to the left the state has become. We all know that, but it's happening. That's how these people are going to be reelected, is by servicing these tenants that don't want these increases. And we have to look at it like, what would you prefer in an area where you have buildings? Rent control. How many cities in the state have rent control? San Francisco, Los Angeles, West Hollywood, Santa Monica, Berkeley, Mountain View, the most expensive cities in the state. There's not that many, there's like 14. And we need to look at it like it's coming, and we have to grasp it and appreciate it, instead of, we spent $100 million to defeat Prop 10, and what did it do for us? We're in the exact same place. Rent control is gonna be here, and I think we all need to have it. All of us have also made a lot of done really well on value add rent control deals. It might become the buyout game again. I mean, people in the last 4 or 5 years in LA were just buying buildings with low-paying tenants, buying them all out, selling them and making millions. You can keep doing your business that way. Let's understand it's coming, and let's not be scared of it. Let's not let it drive down our markets, and let's absorb it, and wherever we have, if you're in the middle of a value-add deal, get through it so you have your rents at market, and then be prepared for a full rent control atmosphere, and let's let that then be the new normal, because it's going to be, and not let that have a negative impact on our values and on how we look at deals.
So, me, Bobby, and Jim, you guys could, how is the potential for rent control and some of these ordinances coming up, how is that affecting how you're underwriting projects?
Well, I mean, the way that we're looking at our deals is we are a cash flow lender. So on a stabilized deal with an earnout, if the rent does not go up down the road, the earnout wouldn't be earned. So we're not taking as a lender that inherent risk. On a bridge, we are. And so that's where you kind of come back to who is the sponsor, who are we working with, what kind of experience do they have, what kind of depth do they have. And as many of the folks up here would say, our advances are somewhat conservative. And so, the rent control, I think, really affects us as a lender in twofold. And with any loan is when the interest rate changes, when the fixed period is over and it adjusts to the new rate, where is the cash flow going to be? And that's something we need to be concerned about. And then, that's the main one, really.
So we are primarily short-term bridge lenders. So we work with a lot of brokers from Marcus Millichap Capital Corporation, and they're same list, and also sponsors and helping them execute on their value-add game plan. So a lot of that is going to require we provide earnouts for unit upgrades, for facade improvements, soft storage if need be. The way we're really in it for the short term, and obviously we're looking at exit strategies important. We want to make sure that we could be taken out, but we're looking more at the collateral and more at the sponsor and their ability to turn around a deal. So we may be able to just talk and everything in terms of legislation that is coming down the pipeline. We're sort of looking at things at a much shorter horizon, and frankly, when we provide earnouts for tenant relocations, those numbers are much bigger than they used to be, and so we're looking at numbers double, and we're being very conservative in terms of what we're underwriting, which puts more pressure on the pro forma numbers when you're getting in at already small margins and a small cap rate. But we've done up to 90% loan to cost, assuming, it could be someone who bought a vacant building, and so that rarely happens. But we're focusing, looking at the takeout. So yeah.
So I'm just gonna ask you guys one question that's not on your notes, and we'll start with David and work your way down. And that's just in the value add business, what if anything is keeping you up at night?
Without question is the answer of what's gonna be with legislation. I mean, it's all about the value add, and Yoni, I'm not suggesting, Jonathan, that
He's my
you
cousin,
suggest.
Yoni's just my
Nickname.
nickname.
So Jonathan,
Who's Yoni?
while I agree that it's likely that's the future, I think what keeps you up at night is if you're buying a deal today, where do you get caught in the middle on your value add business plan? That's what's gonna keep you up at night. It's, when the market's adjusted for the fact that the legislation is in effect, okay, so then you're buying it based on those economics. But if you're buying today on a different set of economics, then what's gonna keep you up at night is, when is the game gonna change? And what's gonna happen with your takeout? What's gonna happen with your carry? What's gonna happen with your promotes? What's gonna happen with your ability to meet all of the investment thresholds that you promise your investors? So that's what would keep me up at night.
So on the lending side, on bridge or stabilization earnout loans, we're really betting on two things. One is the property and performance down the road. That's with any kind of commercial loan that we do. That doesn't keep us up at night. But it is the business plan and the execution of that business plan by the sponsor. And so that's where we look to historical, success, making sure they've done it before. This is their first rodeo, and it allows us to feel comfortable that the business plan will work, which will then in turn, property will cash flow for itself.
For us, I think and I alluded to earlier, if you think of ground up construction and as a value add play, I think it's a function of where interest rates are going to be when your project is complete. What do you underwrite for construction costs during the course? LA is becoming, with the exception of some of these TOC ordinances, becoming some of these neighborhoods are becoming more and more development averse, and it's a sort of not in my backyard syndrome. And so the question is, and then we're building for a very high-end demographic, and that just does not represent, maybe represents this room, but does not represent most of the folks in LA. And so really, what's going to become of projects that are not entitled and have not come out of the ground, I think, and how you're looking at those numbers and whether you're actually stress testing them or not. I think that's an important component.
Jonathan?
It's the same pretty much as what David said, which is the unknown right now of where legislation is going to go in terms of rent control, and how do you look at a deal and the upside if overnight the local city of where you're buying can enact rent control. There's ways that, and when we're buying those deals today, we're taking leverage that can reflect an overnight change. We're putting more equity into deals. We're no longer taking a 2-year bridge loan with a 1-year extension. It's got to be a 5-year fix, and we're seeing the lenders now start to, like Bank of Cal, their bridge loan, they'll give you a 5-year fixed rate bridge loan, and it's a bit higher than what the standard rate looks like. But that's that's what we're seeing is becoming the new normal to be able to put into your business plan. The one thing that would keep me up at night is if the state becomes draconian and all of a sudden we're talking about vacancy control, which means that even upon a vacancy, you can only then raise the rent up, 6 or 7% above what the previous person was paying, because that is next level that will really, really ruin the business. So vacancy control, much more than, like I said before, I think rent control is coming, but it's that opportunity once that unit does become vacant to renovate and release that market. Losing that and having a percentage off of what the previous person was paying, that's the scariest part about all this. And the timing, the timing.
What keeps us up at night is legislative risk, and also buying at the top of the cycle when we're 10 years into the current expansion.
For me, I don't know, I haven't slept for 5 years, so it doesn't really matter. But for the most part, for me, it's the entitlement and the ground-up development more than the value add. That definitely taking away a lot of the stress come with that. Once you get the value add, we're looking at that, you have a building and nothing to worry about. Now we just value and dial out. But the entitlement in California definitely takes a lot of sleeping hours.
And I'd say for me is, where do the working people, the workforce people actually, where do they live? So we had guys, the majority of the people that work for us lived in the San Fernando Valley, and they'd be able to drive downtown and to the west side for our projects, and to Ventura County if they needed to. And today, most San Fernando Valley has gotten priced so up that our workforce people are now moving to Palmdale and Lancaster and making the drive all the way to downtown LA. And where, at some point, where do the workforce people live? So that's what's keeping me up at night. And so with that, we want to thank our panel, and we give our panel a hand.